Welcome back to Book 9 of the Odyssey. We're going to be continuing with Odysseus. He is at this point trapped in the cave with the Cyclops. When we left off, he had planned on killing the Cyclops and then realized that that would leave him stuck inside with his men. We've already lost a couple of men to the Cyclops, so it's important that we find our way out of this cave. If you are following along, we left off on the bottom of page 1216. So we're going to begin our audio today when the young dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world. Here we go. Keep in mind that as we go forward, you're going to keep paying attention to the rules of hospitality, how to be a good host and also a good guest, and the fate of Odysseus. A lot of times you'll find that Odysseus is blaming the gods for his fate, but I'd like you to pay attention, especially in this second part of the listening, to how Odysseus contributes to his own fate. Here we go.
When the young dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world, the Cyclops built a fire and milked his handsome ewes, all in due order, putting the sucklings to the mothers. Then, his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men to make his breakfast, and whisked away his great door slab to let his sheep go through, but he, behind, reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground. Then stillness. And now I pondered how to hurt him worst, if but Athena granted what I prayed for. Here are the means I thought would serve my turn. A club or staff lay there along the fold, an olive tree, felled green and left to season for Cyclops' hand. And it was like a mast, a lugger of 20 oars, broad in the beam, a deep-sea going craft, might carry so long, so big around, it seemed.
Let's keep in mind that Odysseus has asked Athena to grant him what he prayed for. If you had done all the Ed puzzles prior, you know that Athena is a very sympathetic character. She has a lot of sympathy for Odysseus and his journey home. So let's see if that's something that was granted towards him.
Now I chopped out a 6-foot section of this pole and set it down before my men, who scraped it. And when they had it smooth, I hewed again to make a stake with pointed end. I held this in the fire's heart and turned it, toughening it, then hid it, well back in the cavern, under one of the dung piles in profusion there. Now came the time to toss for it. Who ventured along with me? Whose hand could bear to thrust and grind that spike in Cyclops' eye when mild sleep had mastered him? As luck would have it, the men I would have chosen won the toss. 4 strong men, and I made 5 as captain. At evening came the shepherd with his flock, his woolly flock. The rams as well this time entered the cave. By some sheep-herding whim or a god's bidding, none were left outside. He hefted his great boulder into place, and sat him down to milk the bleeding ewes in proper order, put the lambs to suck, and swiftly ran through all his evening chores. Then he caught 2 more men, and feasted on them. My moment was at hand, and I went forward, holding an ivy bowl of my dark drink, looking up, saying,
Before we get to what he's saying, let's keep in mind that we now have a plan in place. We have a sharp object. We have men who have been recruited. We are going to wait for the Cyclops to return, and he has. And he has placed that boulder back in its spot. So we still need to keep in mind, how are we going to get out of the cave even if we kill the Cyclops? Pay close attention to the plot here.
Cyclops, try some wine. Here's liquor to wash down your scraps of men. Taste it, and see the kind of drink we carried under our planks. I meant it for an offering if you would help us home, but you are mad, unbearable, a bloody monster. After this, will any other traveler come to see you? He seized and drained the bowl, and it went down so fiery and smooth, he called for more. Give me another, thank you kindly. Tell me, How are you called? I'll make a gift will please you. Even Cyclopes know the wine grapes grow out of grassland and loam in heaven's rain. But here's a bit of nectar and ambrosia. 3 bowls I brought him, and he poured them down. I saw the fuddle and flush come over him. Then I sang out in cordial tones, Cyclops, you ask my honorable name? Remember the gift you promised me, and I shall tell you. My name is Nobody. Mother, father, and friends, everyone calls me Nobody. And he said, Nobody's my meat then. After I eat his friends, others come first. There's a noble gift now. Even as he spoke, he reeled and tumbled backward, his great head lolling to one side, and sleep took him like any creature. Drunk, hiccuping, he dribbled streams of liquor and bits of men.
Okay, so at this point, we have 2 extra layers to the plot. We have provided him with the wine that Odysseus had already talked about being the best wine ever. He's in love with it, wants more, and Odysseus has provided a name. It's a false name. He's named himself Nobody. And as an offering back, the Cyclops has offered, okay, to thank you for the wine, I will eat you last. All right, let's see how he gets out of this, because at this point, the Cyclops is drunk, hiccuping, and looks like he might be falling asleep soon, and we still need to be able to get out of the cave.
Now by the gods I drove my big hand spike deep in the embers, charring it again, and cheered my men along with battle talk to keep their courage up. No quitting now. The pike of olive, green though it had been, reddened and glowed as if about to catch. I drew it from the coals, and my 4 fellows gave me a hand, lugging it near the Cyclops as more than natural force nerved them. Straight forward they sprinted, lifted it, and rammed it deep in his crater eye, and I leaned on it, turning it as a shipwright turns a drill in planking, having men below to swing the 2-handled strap that spins it in the groove. So with our brand we bored that great eye socket, while blood ran out around the red-hot bar. Eyelid and lash were seared, the pierced ball hissed broiling, and the roots popped. In a smithy, one sees a white-hot axe head or an adze, plunged and wrung in a cold tub, screeching steam, the way they make soft iron hale and hard. Just so, that eyeball hissed around the spike. The Cyclops bellowed, and the rock roared round him, and we fell back in fear. Clawing his face, he tugged the bloody spike out of his eye, threw it away, and his wild hands went groping. Then he set up a howl for Cyclopes, who lived in caves on windy peaks nearby. Some heard him, and they came by divers ways to clump around outside and call, What ails you, Polyphemus? Why do you cry so sore in the starry night? You will not let us sleep. Sure, no man's driving off your flock. No man has tricked you, ruined you. Out of the cave, the mammoth Polyphemus roared in answer, Nobody's tricked me. Nobody's ruined me. To this rough shout they made a sage reply. Ah, well, if nobody has played you foul there in your lonely bed, we are no use in pain given by great Zeus. Let it be your father, Poseidon Lord, to whom you pray.
Okay, well, it looks like giving the name of Nobody has done Odysseus a great service. As the Cyclops is screaming out in pain, his neighbors, I wouldn't call them friends, his neighbors come to find out what's going on, and as they approach, they ask, "What is happening? Who has harmed you?" Nobody. Nobody has tricked me. Nobody's ruined me. So they feel as if, okay, well, then we're going to go now. Go talk to your father. And here we go. This is a little bit extra of a layer if you didn't catch on from the title. Poseidon, let it be your father. Poseidon, Lord, to whom you pray. So talk to your father. Let him know that you need help.
So saying, they trailed away, and I was filled with laughter to see how like a charm the name deceived them. Now Cyclops, wheezing as the pain came on him, fumbled to wrench away the great doorstone, and squatted in the breach with arms thrown wide for any silly beast or man who bolted, hoping somehow I might be such a fool. But I kept thinking how to win the game. Death sat there huge. How could we slip away? I drew on all my wits and ran through tactics, reasoning as a man will for dear life, until a trick came, and it pleased me well. The Cyclops rams were handsome, fat, with heavy fleeces, a dark violet. 3 abreast I tied them silently together, twining cords of willow from the ogre's bed, then slung a man under each middle one to ride there safely, shielded left and right. So 3 sheep could convey each man. I took the woolliest ram, the choicest of the flock, and hung myself under his kinky belly, pulled up tight, with fingers twisted deep in sheepskin ringlets for an iron grip. So, breathing hard, we waited until morning. When dawn spread out her fingertips of rose, the rams began to stir, moving for pasture, and peals of bleating echoed round the pens, where dams with udders full called for a milking. Blinded and sick with pain from his head wound, the master stroked each ram, then let it pass. But my men, riding on the pectoral fleece, the giant's blind hands blundering never found. Last of them all, my ram, the leader, came, weighted by wool, and me with my meditations. The Cyclops patted him, and then he said, "Sweet cousin ram, why lag behind the rest in the night cave? You never linger so, but graze before them all, and go afar to crop sweet grass, and take your stately way, leading along the streams, until at evening you run to be the first one in the fold. Why now so far behind? Can you be grieving over your master's eye? That carrion rogue and his accursed companions burnt it out when he had conquered all my wits with wine. Nobody will not get out alive, I swear."
Okay, so this is a little bit of verbal irony that we have going on here because we know that Odysseus has a plan in place to get out of here. And considering this story is told from a retrospective, he is standing in front of his new host telling this story to him. So we know that he does get out of here. Nobody will get out alive, I swear. And it's almost correct. He will get out alive. And the ironic part is the sheep is staying close to him. And he believes that it's because he recognizes that his master is in pain, when in reality, maybe he's staying close because he knows that nobody, or Odysseus, is latched onto him and trying to get out. Well, we'll see how it works. Let's get to the next page.
Oh, had you brain and voice to tell where he may be now, dodging all my fury. Bashed by this hand and bashed on this rock wall, his brains would strew the floor, and I should have rest from the outrage nobody worked upon me. He sent us into the open then. Close by I dropped and rolled clear of the ram's belly, going this way and that to untie the men. With many glances back, we rounded up his fat, stiff-legged sheep to take aboard, and drove them down to where the good ship lay. We saw as we came near our fellows' faces shining. Then we saw them turn to grief, tallying those who had not fled from death. I hushed them, jerking head and eyebrows up, and in a low voice told them, "Load this herd, move fast, and put the ship's head toward the breakers." They all pitched in at loading, then embarked and struck their oars into the sea. Far out, as far offshore as shouted words would carry, I sent a few back to the adversary. "O Cyclops, would you feast on my companions? Puny am I in a caveman's hands? How do you like the beating that we gave you, you damned cannibal? Eater of guests under your roof, Zeus and the gods have paid you. The blind thing, in his doubled fury, broke a hilltop in his hands and heaved it after us. Ahead of our black prow it struck and sank, whelmed in a spuming geyser, a giant wave that washed the ship's stern foremost back to shore. I got the longest boat hook out and stood fending us off, with furious nods to all to put their backs into a racing stroke. Row, row, or perish. So the long oars bent, kicking the foam sternward, making head until we drew away and twice as far. Now when I cupped my hands, I heard the crew in low voices protesting, "God's sake, Captain, why bait the beast again? Let him alone."
Okay, so at this point, Odysseus is throwing in the face of the Cyclops as much as he can the fact that he has outwitted him. This is showing a great amount of the word that we had used, hubris. He can't help but taunt the beast as he is leaving. And you get an idea of his sheer size based on the fact that as the men are leaving, he's able to pull off the top of, I believe it was a mountain, a hilltop in his hands and heave it after us. So he threw it at them, and even the men on board are begging the captain, "Odysseus, please stop. Let him alone. Let us get out of here." He can't even help himself. All right, let's see what happens.
That tidal wave he made on the first throw all but beached us, all but stove us in. Give him our bearing with your trumpeting, he'll get the range and lob a boulder. Aye, he'll smash our timbers and our heads together. I would not heed them in my glorying spirit, but let my anger flare, and yelled, "Cyclops, if ever mortal man inquire how you were put to shame and blinded, tell him Odysseus, raider of cities, took your eye, Laertes' son, whose home's on Ithaca." At this he gave a mighty sob and rumbled, "Now comes the weird upon me, spoken of old. A wizard, grand and wondrous, lived here, Telemus, the son of Eurymus. Great length of days he had in wizardry among the Cyclopes, and these things he foretold for time to come. My great eye lost, and at Odysseus' hands. Always I had in mind some giant, armed in giant force, would come against me here. But you, small, pitiful, and twiggy, you put me down with wine. You blinded me. Come back, Odysseus, and I'll treat you well, praying the god of earthquake to befriend you. His son I am, for he by his avowal fathered me, and if he will, he may heal me of this black wound, he and no other, of all the happy gods or mortal men."
Okay, just a quick side note here. What the Cyclops is talking about is that there was a prophecy that had predicted that he would have lost his eye. He just never expected it to be at the hands of this small, tiny man. So it's all coming to him. As Odysseus proclaims his name and where he's from, Cyclops is realizing that that prophecy was correct, but that he promises that his father will repay Odysseus for taking out his eye. His father is Poseidon. We had learned from some of our other Ed puzzles that there is an ongoing animosity between Poseidon and Odysseus, and this is generally where it's going to stem from, the fact that he stabbed his son in the eye to make him lose it. So let's see how it ends.
Few words I shouted in reply to him. If I could take your life, I would, and take your time away, and hurl you down to hell. The god of earthquake could not heal you there. At this he stretched his hands out in his darkness toward the sky of stars, and prayed Poseidon, "Oh, hear me, Lord, blue girdler of the islands. If I am thine indeed, and thou art father, grant that Odysseus, raider of cities, never see his home. Laertes' son, I mean, who kept his hall on Ithaca. Should destiny intend that he shall see his roof again among his family in his fatherland, far be that day, and dark the years between. Let him lose all companions, and return under strange sail to bitter days at home. In these words he prayed, and the god heard him. Now he laid hands upon a bigger stone, and wheeled around, titanic for the cast, to let it fly in the black-prowed vessel's track. But it fell short, just aft the steering oar, and whelming seas rose giant above the stone to bear us onward toward the island. There, as we ran in, we saw the squadron waiting, the trim ships drawn up side by side, and all our troubled friends who waited, looking seaward. We beached her, grinding keel in the soft sand, and waded in ourselves on the sandy beach. Then we unloaded all the Cyclops' flock, to make division, share and share alike. Only my fighters voted that my ram, the prize of all, should go to me. I slew him by the seaside, and burnt his long thigh bones to Zeus beyond the storm cloud, Cronus' son, who rules the world. But Zeus disdained my offering. Destruction for my ships he had in store, and death for those who sailed them, my companions. Now all day long, until the sun went down, we made our feast on mutton and sweet wine, till after sunset in the gathering dark, we went to sleep above the wash of ripples. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose touched the world, I roused the men, gave orders to man the ships, cast off the mooring lines, and filing in to sit beside the rowlocks, oarsmen in line dipped oars in the gray sea. So we moved out, sad in the vast offing, having our precious lives, but not our friends.
Okay, so that's actually going to end book 9 for us. We'll be moving on to our next book soon, but I do want you to keep in mind we were able to see a lot of instances of hospitality, and think about how good of a guest was Odysseus. Was he right to do what he did to the Cyclops? Was the Cyclops right to do what he did to Odysseus and his men? We end this section of the story with "So we moved out, sad and vast offering, having our precious lives, but not our friends." He lost a few men while in the Cyclops cave. Is that Odysseus's fault, or is that the god's fault? And as far as the taunting and offering up his name, Zeus, it says, is going to be punishing him. He says, but Zeus disdained my offering. He had burnt a little piece of the offerings to Zeus to thank him for the safe journey so far. But why would Zeus not take those offerings? Why would Zeus be annoyed with Odysseus at this point? And I think there's obvious reasons for Poseidon to have been annoyed as well. But keep in mind the connections. Zeus and Poseidon are brothers. Zeus and Athena, that's father and daughter. And Athena has an affinity, a sympathy towards Odysseus. So keep those relationships in mind as we go forward. All right, best of luck. Make sure that you're answering all of your questions, and I hope you enjoyed this way of doing the Odyssey.